Tennessee death row inmate Edmund Zagorski will die tonight by the electric chair. The 63-year-old chose electrocution rather than death by lethal injection. It's a choice that does not exist in our neighboring state of Georgia, due in part to a Knoxville attorney. 10 News reporter Stephanie Haynes explains.
As a young lawyer, Stephen Ross Johnson was part of a significant case in Georgia,
where the Georgia Supreme Court determined that death by electrocution was inhumane.
In 2001, the court outlawed death by electrocution, at the time joining 19 other states that solely used lethal injection. As much as the case inspired Johnson, it also haunted him.
Having worked on that case in Georgia 17 years ago, is forever burned into my brain.
According to the brief, evidence showed that sometimes 2 or more applications of current were needed to kill the inmate. Evidence also showed electrocution burned and blistered the body and destroyed the brain by cooking it.
Because there is such a debate right now and a tremendous amount of uncertainty about the pain and the suffering, Mr. Zagorski in Tennessee apparently has chosen, on that basis, electrocution. He's chosen one flawed process over another flawed process.
63-year-old Edmund Zagorski was convicted in 1984 for the murders of 2 men. Last month, he requested death by electric chair, prompting the state to grant him a 10-day stay to prepare for the preference. This comes less than 3 months after the execution of Billy Ray Irick, who died by lethal injection, through which method some argue also causes tremendous pain. Johnson condemns both methods and asks folks who don't have sympathy to consider this.
There's no clean, sanitary way to kill another human being.
And that was Stephanie Haynes reporting. You can follow any last-minute developments in Zagorski's execution on our website, WBIR.com.